Well, it looks like in-party fighting and tensions among the New South Wales Liberals and Nationals are continuing to simmer as the Deputy Premier, John Barilaro, refuses to guarantee that he will keep the coalition united, less than a week after he threatened to plunge the Berejiklian government into minority. In an extraordinary question time, Labor questioned John Barilaro on whether he would refrain from making threats to destroy the coalition over the issues around the Koala policy. I caught up with New South Wales One Nation leader Mark Latham shortly after that particular parliamentary.
Well, the real story is a draconian land use control, supposedly to save koalas, but really it's a tree preservation policy to say that by spatial mapping, you know, from the satellite, if these green bureaucrats and ministers can see a clump of trees in someone's backyard, in a suburb, even areas in country towns, the roundabout in Grafton, and the list of absurdity goes on. Well, they're classifying that as koala habitat, putting new development restrictions and costs on the landowner. And this policy is way out of control. I don't blame the National Party for being incredibly frustrated about it. In an economic recession, our economy in this state's collapsed by 8.6% in the last quarter. We should be clearing away green tape. We shouldn't be having a koala preservation policy that in truth is restricting any form of development in New South Wales that clears away a bunch of trees. Now, unless they can go out and look at areas where it's known and proven to have koalas, you can't lock up large suburbs of Sydney, whole country towns, put restrictions on farmers, really hold back land use development in New South Wales for no apparent purpose. The policy is a complete disaster.
Now, of course, the ADF has confirmed to this special commission of inquiry that they did offer guards, and the Victorian government rejected that. Now, that goes completely at odds with what Premier Daniel Andrews has been saying for months. He's been caught out telling porkies, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has, and it's a real measure of the madness of how Dan Andrews has handled public sector delivery in Victoria. The reason they didn't use the ADF or other public sector organisations, you'd think socialists in Victoria would be signing up the public sector workers really quickly. They wanted a diversity policy. They signed up a private security firm from Ashfield in Sydney on the basis they were Indigenous owned. I mean, you needed to do the job. It didn't matter about skin colour or whether people were Indigenous, not Indigenous. They needed to be able to do the job to stop the health and economic disaster in Victoria. So on diversity grounds, the Victorian Department of Jobs signed up the Ashfield security firm that couldn't do the work. And beyond that, when they did bring in public sector workers like the park rangers, they gave them training on equality and diversity, but no training about COVID infection control or how to do the PPE. So a complete and utter sign of how identity politics run through the Victorian public sector has been a disaster. It doesn't matter about your skin colour, your sexuality, your gender. Can you do the job? Can you do the job and keep Victorians safe? And Dan Andrews on that front has been a pathetic, hopeless failure.
I want to switch to Queensland now. The Palaszczuk government is spending like there's no tomorrow. The problem is they're spending taxpayer money. They're spending money on ads, telling us how good they are at responding to COVID. They're also spending a lot of money on consultants, 528 grand on consultants who are basically doing polling to see whether or not the public think they're doing a pretty good job. Now, I don't have a problem with the spending of money on ads to tell us how good you are and research on how you're doing. But this is taxpayer money. This is the stuff that Putin would be proud of.
The Palaszczuk border policy is poll-driven. She's not doing what's in the best interests of the Queensland economy or Queensland health. She's doing this on what she sees as a vote winner as the pollster brings in the results. And they brought in a guy, Mike Kaiser, who in the Beattie government was kicked out because of electoral problems there. I suppose you say there were questions of not being enrolled in the right spot, and Beattie kicked him out of the government on that basis. So he's been expelled from one Queensland Labor government as a Member of Parliament. Now he's back as a pollster and a consultant, and it's a very, very bad sign that Palaszczuk would put electoral concerns, her own job, ahead of the jobs that are needed, opening up tourism, getting people back into Queensland. I think it's shameful what she's done, and also the politics of cuddling up to the AFL and Tom Hanks. You know, if you're one of the elites and you've got a photo opportunity with Annastacia, you're in, no worries, you're in like Flynn. But if you're a grieving family, you don't get a fair crack in Queensland.
Finally, the Maori party in the in New Zealand have come out with a policy that by 2026, if they have any power at all, they'll change the name of New Zealand. They're going to call it Aotearoa. And of course, they also intend to change the name of Christchurch and Wellington. And all European names in New Zealand will be gone by 2026. It's quite a radical policy.
We love the Maoris. They were a fierce warrior people back in the day. They gave it to Captain Cook when he sailed past. But the truth is New Zealand was discovered and named by Abel Tasman, the Dutch explorer. It's a long-standing name. It's a majority European background country. I think the Maoris about 20%. And they've got a treaty. They've made some progress in terms of rights, a long way to go in terms of getting people off the dole and out of welfare dependency and stopping family violence in certain Maori communities. But I think they've got bigger problems to worry about than name changes, which don't achieve much. They're just a financial bonanza for letterhead consultants who'll, you know, design some new logo for New Zealand to go with the name. You know, it's New Zealand. You know, we hate them at footy, we hate them at cricket, and we want to beat them as New Zealand, not some other bogus name that they've invented.